Hey folks, so today's topic is going to be instinctive training. Now this is going to be a bit of a different video to what I normally do. And normally I have something to talk about, advice to give you, hints and tips, stuff like that. This is more of an exploratory concept, a discussion about something I have no real experience with, just some thoughts going through my head, and I want to share this with you and frame the topic, frame the discussion so that you can provide your own thoughts and perhaps we can discuss. I think it'd be interesting as a thought-provoking video. I'm going to just say from the off, I very much doubt this is the panacea for gains. Like if you're not very happy with your gains, I doubt that this is going to be the key to unlocking anything. It's probably something else. This is a minorly important topic and concept which may have some application for some niche benefits. So let's just firstly outline what we're talking about. So instinctive training, what is it? Instinctive training is having either no idea or only a partial idea of what you want to train. Now, that is the complete opposite of having a training routine, having a set of numbers to beat, all that kind of stuff. Instinctive training, depending on the level of instinctiveness, would mean that you're going to the gym on a schedule of what feels good on the day so that you're in tune with what you want to do. And as I'll explain later on, there are various degrees of how we could approach this. But essentially, it is shying away from a routine and just doing what feels good, doing what allows you to work the muscles hard enough on the day. So if the goal of weight training is to place a good degree of stress on the muscle, a good degree of mechanical tension, then that is the only goal for a training routine, which is instinctive. Go in, put some tension on the muscle, exhaust it. Now, I will say this approach, it sounds like it's less thinking, but it's not. It is the same, if not more, actual thinking. So it's not a case of you just go in the gym and you're taken by inspiration of what to do next. Like, you have to actively put some thought into this. And I think it's very true that you have to think at some point. If you have a routine and you have a plan, you do your thinking before the gym. If you have no plan and you go in with the thoughts of doing instinctive training, you have to start your thinking time in the gym. And bear in mind that adds an extra layer of complication. So think of it as displacing when you're doing your thinking about the routine. You're always going to be thinking. And with this approach, you're probably going to end up thinking even more, not less. So this is not a simplification. If anything, this is a complication, okay, which is one of the negatives, which I'll talk about later. Now, firstly, let's just carry on the theme of what is instinctive training. Why would we be interested in discussing this? Surely a routine is good. Great. What is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? So I think the big thing that's always piqued my curiosity about this approach, I've never done it for any period of time, but what has always piqued my curiosity about this approach is that it is a cornerstone of bodybuilding. That's always been the way. Everything that I've read and every really good bodybuilder that I've spoken to does instinctive training. Every podcast that I've seen has got bodybuilders talking about how they go to the gym and they figure out what they're doing at the time. I recall watching a podcast with Fouad Abiad and his crew. They were talking about routines, and anyway, Fouad was actually quite surprised that people used routines. People had the same written down sets and reps, and they would try to beat those every week. He thought that was fascinating, which at the time I thought was hilarious. Like, this is a guy who's a pro bodybuilder and he finds it fascinating that people actually have routines. This is how far removed he is away from a routine. So instinctive training is a cornerstone of bodybuilding. And I'm not just talking about the modern guys, I'm talking about the older guys too. Arnold, Serge Nubret, none of them really had routines. Yeah, sure, we know what Arnold's routine is, like his bulking routine, his golden six, all that kind of stuff. We know what all these things are, but they weren't stuck to on a week-by-week basis. These were just examples of things he was doing, like a sample day. I recently did a video on Serge Nubret. Now, yes, the video that I did was a great representation of Serge's training principles, but that wasn't what he did every week. It wasn't. It just wasn't. he's on record as being observed. And some days he would go to the gym and just bench press for 45 minutes. So he had no set routine. It was all instinctive. And every good bodybuilder in the last sort of however many decades has trained with instinct in mind. Now, that is what constantly piques my curiosity, because it is so far removed from what the rest of us actually do. And so I think this is important because of this one truism, which I think is important in any endeavor in life, and that is having a respect for reality. Now, we might all sit here and go, instinctive training, that's for drug users, it's for genetic outliers, and we know what we're doing. And yeah, we can say that with a good degree of certainty, because I've had success in training and I've mostly always had routines. 25 years of following a routine that I've made, but certainly a routine. So I can say with a good degree of certainty, you know what, I don't need it, and maybe I don't. But I think you have to respect the reality of any endeavor. And for me, it's very similar to, and I'm not calling anybody out with this next thing I'm about to say, but it's very similar when you have guys who have built a lot of their mass with dirty bulking. Then they finish the dirty bulk and they go, never doing that again. In fact, nobody do that. You should all bulk more sensibly. Don't get fat like me. And I know, because I'm pretty sure I've said that at some point. And I could say that. I can try and guide you guys away from getting overly fat. Sure, I can. And it's sensible to do so, because it's not a good idea. But again, the reality of the situation is that's what I did. I had a 20-year bulk. That's what I did. And the vast majority of people who say don't dirty bulk after they've dirty bulked also did the same thing. They managed to build the majority of their muscle mass with dirty bulking. It's no different from people who built a large portion of their physique via training for strength. I built a large portion of my physique as a powerlifter. As a competitive powerlifter, that's what built the majority of my physique. Now, sure, I don't recommend that as the route for hypertrophy, but I have to respect the fact that is what built the majority of my mass. It would be silly of me to sit here and go, powerlifting doesn't build muscle. Of course it does. What an idiotic statement. And again, I'm not calling anybody out, but you would have to be a fool to deny actual reality. That's all I'm saying, which I think is sensible, because the moment that we deny reality, we start to fabricate our own truths. And that can go wrong because it hasn't been tested with experience. Like, I've tested dirty bulking for 20 years. Like, that builds a lot of muscle. Yeah. Now, if I could reverse time, get back to being 18 years old, get really lean, do very controlled bulks and cuts, and then 20 years later, end up as big as I am, then sure, I could say this is the way forward. But at the moment, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, reality is important. You have to respect how things are done versus how you think things could be better. You might have great ideas, but that's only a theory. It's not what you actually did. Therefore, going back to the instinctive training example, I think it's important to respect reality. Yes, you could say drugs, genetics. Yes, I'm not saying no. Of course, that's all relevant. But that is the reality of modern bodybuilding. That is the reality of any bodybuilding. That's always been the case. It's always been partially or mostly instinctive. Now, I want to just carry on this conversation and talk about advantages of instinctive training before I talk about the disadvantages. Because again, this is not a game changer. There are just as many disadvantages as there are advantages. So advantages are, if the goal of training for hypertrophy is to exhaust the muscle, is to place mechanical tension on the muscle to the point where it then loses contractile force and gets exhausted, then we have a focus on the metric that is the most important, and that is how your muscles feel during the session. Are they getting tired? Are they losing strength? Are you even targeting the right muscle? I like to think my audience is intelligent, and you guys know that for bodybuilding, you've got to be targeting the muscle, right? But a lot of guys in the gym, they'll be throwing up curls with the lower back, biceps won't feel anything, but they're adding weight to the bar, so they think things are going well. Now, the advantage with instinctive training is the idea is you're supposed to be honing in on what's important, which is exhausting the muscles you're training. If that's not happening, you can easily switch to a different exercise or whatever else you connect with on the day. So there is an advantage there. Now, you can do that to varying degrees. An analogy is, look, when I was a school teacher, it's a perfect analogy. So when you're a young teacher, when you're a trainee teacher, you tend to have these very detailed lesson plans, which is like having a detailed training plan. Now, as an advanced teacher, as a more mature teacher, you realize plans can hold you back, because I can have the fantastic plan, but I turn up on the day, things aren't clicking. Perhaps the students have just been in a PE class and they're exhausted. Perhaps it's been the end of a long week. It's a Friday afternoon and they're tired. They just want to go home and things just aren't working, although my lesson plan is perfect. I've had situations like that as a school teacher. What did I do? I stopped the lesson, went off plan, went to a completely different activity. Perhaps I got everyone to stand up, do some stretching for 5 minutes or a couple of minutes, or perhaps I just stopped everyone and just did a very basic person-to-person talk and say, look, are we getting it? As an experienced teacher, you can look around the room and you know when people are trying to get it but aren't really getting it. And in that case, you stop the lesson, even though it's not on your lesson plan, you fix the learning and then you carry on. Now, that is a very similar thing to instinctive training. If you're going through a session, things aren't clicking, your knees hurt, elbows hurt, you're not really feeling the intended muscle, fine. Maybe it's an exercise which previously you've really connected with, but today, for whatever reason, you're just not connecting with it. Okay, stop everything, go to a different exercise. Ooh, I feel something. I feel the muscle contract. I feel it working. I feel it getting tired. Great. I've saved the session. So there is a focus on mechanical tension and fatigue of the intended muscle, which is actually what we're trying to do anyway when we train. This whole idea of progressive overload, yeah, sure. And I think being slightly more in touch with the muscles you're trying to train can only really have benefits. Now, the other thing is, I touched on it, but just to specify it, you can navigate yourself away from pain. I think everyone's had the experience of going through a training session, something feels slightly off, but not enough that you want to stop the training session. So perhaps your elbow feels slightly sore, but enough that you can push through. Maybe it's not a good idea to push through, right? So in that situation, if you were to be more of an instinctive trainer, you go, okay, I'm going to move to a different body part or a different exercise and find what clicks. So there are advantages. I think the main advantage is in feel and safety. So this is why I say, if you haven't achieved a great deal of success without instinctive training, like with a routine, it's unlikely that this is going to be a game changer. I don't think this is a big, huge factor. I'm aware that I can be quite persuasive. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking to yourself, yes, that is it, that is what's going to unlock my gains, I doubt it. Like, there's probably glaring holes in what you're doing already if you haven't got any gains. This is not going to be the difference between zero or minimal gains versus loads of gains. This just isn't. It's not a big factor. It will slightly increase your safety profile, I think, and it will probably slightly increase your gains. But I think that's about it. Now, disadvantages, and this is big. Again, like I'm saying, guys, this is a discussion. I'm not telling you to do this for sure. I'm not even telling you I've done this. I've never done it. This is just a topic which I've been interested in for years. So disadvantages, and these are pretty severe. Disadvantages is that bodybuilding in its essence is amazingly simple. Bodybuilding is so simple. You go in, you train brutally hard, your body gets signals to grow, you feed the machine, you rest, and you grow. You do that over and over and over again with the right combination of sets and reps, which is quite forgiving, the right frequency, avoiding pain, doing all the right things, working hard. It's very, very simple. This has the potential to complicate your training to the point where it's non-productive. That, for real, this could destroy your training. I'm just going to be upfront about it. And again, if you haven't achieved a great deal of success with a routine, it's unlikely this is going to unlock a load of gains. So I realize I can be very persuasive, but you must bear this in mind. This is not a panacea for gains. This has the potential to wreck everything. Okay, so bodybuilding is very simple. this has the potential to massively complicate it. And for a lot of people, that may be the opposite of what they need. They might be better putting that focus into just more consistency. The second disadvantage is you have to really shift your mentality away from the numbers. There's a certain comfort which goes with having a routine. I get this a lot from female clients, actually, and not to stereotype anyone, but some female clients, they feel a bit intimidated going to a weight room. Understandably, I guess. But if they have a routine, they can just stick their head down, do the routine, not have to worry about anything else. They feel confident, they feel secure because they know what they're doing. If you're trying this approach, either partially or fully, you don't have that comfort blanket. You have to go, you literally have to do your thinking in the gym while people are potentially watching you, while the time is ticking, while your pre-workout has kicked in. All those things, you have to be quick on your feet. You have to shift your mentality away from numbers and just ticking the box to actually thinking during the course of the session. That can do a number on your workout intensity. It can do a number on your flow. The timing of the workout can be thrown right off because there's so much thinking involved. I find if you have a set routine, you have a set rest periods, do the set, rest, tick it off. Do the set, rest, tick it off, on and on and on. And you get into this flow state where 60 minutes goes by like that and you've done a great session. It feels great. So again, disadvantages, you can break that. And yeah, I think that's the majority. I would just end this section, the disadvantages section, by saying if you haven't yet achieved a lot of success in bodybuilding, I doubt this is going to be the thing to make those changes. This is probably something for people who have achieved quite a lot of success already, maybe are flirting with a few injuries, and perhaps are trying to move away from a powerlifting mindset to more of a hypertrophy mindset. That's potentially where I would say the application is. Now, I've gone over in painstaking detail what instinctive training is, the advantages, and the many disadvantages. Now, to help you guys visualize what I'm talking about, I've made this up, but I'm going to present you with 3 models of instinctive training and some of the pros and cons. So if, I hesitate to say this, but if you wanted to try this, these are 3 ways that you could try it. They're different forms of instinctive training, a different extent. So the first way is the most extreme instinctive training that you can possibly imagine, and that is absolutely no structure at all. Like, horrifying, I know, right? But you don't even have training days. You go in and you literally do whatever doesn't hurt or whatever you want to do. No training days, no sets and reps. You don't know how many sets you're going to do. You don't know how many reps you're going to do. You don't know what exercises you're going to do. You don't know when you're going to do anything. You just go in, you literally do what you feel like. Now, the advantage for that is, yeah, I mean, going back to the pain profile again, you could probably train injury-free pretty well because you're literally doing whatever you want to. If something hurts, move on. If your knees hurt on that day, great, it's chest day, right? The other advantage is it could allow you to feel very in tune with what you want to work, like what your body is telling you, which I know sounds a bit woo-woo, and I guess it kind of is, but it's up to you to be responsible and not just train what's easy, but train what needs to be trained. Now, the disadvantage, again, I think there's lots of disadvantages to this. I think you could really wreck your entire training momentum. You could really leave yourself open to a period of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months with absolutely zero gains. Just thinking you're going around, really tensing the muscle, squeezing it, but never actually placing any tension on the muscle. I think when the chips are down, most people don't want to go and do those hard reps. I think that's true. That's certainly true for the majority of what I've seen. Now, a good routine facilitates hard work because you are looking to build on your previous performance every time. So you have a landmark of performance, you need to beat it. You set another landmark, you need to beat that. If you don't have that, you're unlikely to push so hard that you actually beat yourself. So there are disadvantages to complete freedom as well as advantages. Now, the second model is probably, I would say, the most common model you see in gyms around the world. And that is you have some structure. Monday's chest day, Tuesday's back day, Wednesday's leg day. You have some structure. But other than that, you don't know what you're going to train before you walk into the gym. Perhaps you decide what you're going to start with on the drive to the gym or the walk to the gym. But that's all the structure you have. You don't even really know how many reps you're going to do on the day. You just know you're going in to train chest or back or legs. And I will say at this point, typically this whole entire thing, instinctive training, probably does work better with a body part split. Probably. Okay. So that's the second model. You know what days you're going to train, but that's it. You don't know anything else. Advantages of that is that you have at least some structure. So you're not missing body parts. Let's say, for example, you're not very good at training your legs, right? Common example. Okay, if you did purely level 1 instinctive training, the most extreme way of training, just do whatever you want on the day, you might never get around to training legs. You might only train legs every couple of weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, because you're always going to find an excuse. Oh, my knees aren't feeling quite right. And then, of course, you'd hardly ever train your legs, so they're always sore because you never train them. So, yeah, there are advantages to having at least some structure, because at least you're not going to miss body parts. At least you know within a week you're going to train everything at least once. Okay, so there is that advantage. Disadvantages are, I think, similar to level 1, and that is you could throw off everything if you're just going in. The vast majority of people will do this. They'll just go in with absolutely no clue about getting stronger, no real detail about where I am versus a minor increase. So let's say they bench press 60 kilos for sets of 8. Okay, and next time, ideally, they would do 60 kilos for sets of 9. But because they're training instinctively, they just throw 80 on the bar and get nailed. Like they do 3 reps. No good. So tracking your workouts allows for very small incremental increases. If you're doing instinctive training, not so much. Okay. Now, the third way, I think, is possibly a workable halfway solution. Okay, so the third way, I would say, is this. You know what days you're training what. Okay, so you know Monday's a chest day, Tuesday's back day. You know all that, right? You also have some markers of progression. Now, if you're an OG Fazlift subscriber, you know this is a term I've used right from day one. In fact, this was my first video was about markers of progression. So, for example, your main quad exercises are the hack squat and the belt squat, for example. Okay, so those are the things you track, and you kick off every session with one of those exercises. So let's say you have 2 leg days. One session you kick off with the belt squat, the next session you kick off with the hack squat, and you're always looking to track and improve those. So if you did 3 plates aside on the hack squat for 6 reps, you need at least 7 the next time you go in. And you know this, you've written it down, you improve upon that. And you do that for every body part. But the rest of the weekly volume, you do it instinctively. So let's have a look at what that might look like. Okay, let's say you're training chest. Now you kick off with a big heavy exercise, let's say the bench press. You know exactly what you did last time, and you know exactly what you need to do this time to beat that. So you do your 3 sets of bench. So that's 3 sets of chest done. And assuming you want to do about 6 sets per session, let's say you're training chest twice a week, 6 sets per session, 12 sets total per week. Okay, now you've done 3 sets. The remaining 3 sets on that day are completely up for grabs. You do whatever you feel like. So there's that. So advantages are you have at least some structure and some proof that you are improving. You also continuously smash this big exercise, which places a lot of mechanical tension on your muscles. So you have that. You get around the negatives, or some of the negatives, of method 1 and method 2 by having some structure, by having a marker of progression. So that is an advantage. Now, in terms of disadvantage for this approach, you have to almost approach the workout in 2 mindsets. Your first mindset, you kick off with your bread and butter lift, which you're going to try and improve. That's your first mindset. You're going in trying to beat the logbook, beat the numbers. After that, you have to all of a sudden let your hair down a little bit and become much more relaxed about your programming and go instinctively. Not a bad way to go. It does mitigate some of the negatives of a completely instinctual approach, but you still have the potential negatives of feeling a bit lost after that is done. You have to switch your mindset into one about feel and how your muscle feels during the course of the session. But another advantage is maybe you can steer yourself away from injury or aches and pains. So there are advantages to a hybrid approach. And I think if anybody was to try some instinctive training, I think that would be the best hybrid way of doing things. So you still have beat the logbook, progressive overload, big hitters, maybe 1 or 2 per body part, but then the rest of the routine, maybe 50 to 75% of it is more instinctual. I think that has the potential to work. Maybe. Now, before I end this, because I think this has been if you've gotten this far, thank you for entertaining my thoughts. But again, just to remind you, this is all theoretical. But again, I'm interested in it because I respect reality. It's important, I think, to respect reality of how things are done. Who is this not for? I think if you're a control freak, probably not for you. If you really feed off improvements, numbers, knowing exactly what you're doing, if you don't like thinking during the gym, but like before the gym or after the gym, this is probably not for you. Okay. I also think if you have problems with consistency, this is probably not for you. This is not going to improve your consistency. Like, trust me. If you already struggle with getting to the gym 3 or 4 days a week, well, having free license to do whatever you like is not going to help that. Accountability means a lot. And I think lastly, this is not for people who have not yet demonstrated a good track record of growth. Like, this is only going to complicate your training. Like I said at the beginning, this is only going to make things harder, but is not really going to make things easier. It's only going to make things more chaotic, less planned out. So there are huge pitfalls with this training. Understand this is just an open discussion. This is a concept that I found fascinating because I'm obsessed with how things are actually done, not how we think things should be done. That's why I wanted to talk about this today and bring it to light. I would love to hear your opinions. That's really what I'm doing this video for. This is a video to open up discussion. What is your experience in stuff like this? If you can find holes in what I'm saying, please do. I've never done this. I'm not married to it. This is just something which I might be interested in pursuing. And it's really a point of education for all of us, including me. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts, both supportive or criticizing. Yeah, very interesting. But again, one final reminder. This is more than likely going to complicate your training. Unless you really know what you're doing, I don't think this is going to help massively. If anything, this will probably complicate things. So watch and enact this video with caution. I think that's fair. All right. Peace out.